So living organisms can be broadly, generally categorized into two basic things, two broad things. So one is nothing but the responses of plants, to various abiotic components. Okay, so then we can also have responses of animals separately, responses of animals. To the abiotic components. Okay, so what are the important responses that plants will show towards the abiotic components? So when we generally talk about one response, light is an abiotic component, isn't it? So light is part and parcel of the physical environment of the plant. So how plants will respond to the light? So when we talk about the response of the plant towards the light, there are two important types of responses that a plant will give. So one thing is nothing but it is phototropism. Phototropism is one response. Okay, and the next one is nothing but photonasty. Photonasty and phototropism, these are nothing but two important responses that plant gives to the light. So you remember the word photo refers to light. So usually you might have while submitting the application, you will submit your passport size photo. So there you will go for studio and you will take a photo. So there, can you witness light? So you remember, like, light refers to photo means light. Okay, so wherever you get the word photo means light, you remember that. So here, so what is phototropism? Phototropism means some plants will show some sort of directional response to the light. So phototropism is nothing but it's a kind of directional response of the plants to the light or sunlight. So here we will have two types of phototropism. One would be positive phototropism, other would be negative phototropism. What is positive phototropism? For example, let's say if there is a plant and if there is a sunlight, if sunlight is coming and if plant will bend towards, let's say if plant is bending towards the sunlight, so then it is moving in direction towards the direction of the sunlight. So that would be known as positive phototropism. And in opposite to this, if it tries to bend away from the sunlight, so then that would be known as negative phototropism. So these kind of movements would be shown by some of the plants. So that is one type of response. Okay, so then next we have photonasty. So here we have said that directional response of the plant towards the light. So it is usually concerned with the direction of the sunlight. Either it is moving towards the direction of the sunlight or away from the direction of sunlight. So that is phototropism. Whereas photonasty means what? It is, it does not depend upon the direction of the sunlight. It does not depend upon the direction of the sunlight. Rather, it simply depends upon the sunlight as the stimulus. So if sunlight is there, then there would be a kind of response. If sunlight is not there, then there would be a different response. So you can remember the leaves of oxalis plant. How the leaves of oxalis plants. So oxalis plants, if you take the leaves of oxalis plant, they will bloom, they will open during sunlight, and during the dark they will droop. So drooping and opening of the leaves of oxalis plant can be considered as an example for the photonasty. Okay, I hope you might have also saw the videos also. So can you able to recollect those videos we have already saw? Okay, so that is photonastic for movement. That is one thing. So then the next abiotic component that we have would be temperature. Okay, so temperature, when we talk from the perspective of temperature, plants will show a kind of response to the temperature. So the response that plants gives to the temperature is nothing but thermonasty. Thermonasty. Nasty means it's a kind of shyness. It's a kind of shyness, or it's a kind of response, we can say. So thermo means temperature, response of a plant towards temperature as the stimulus is nothing but thermonasty. Can you able to follow that? So that is one. And then, so apart from this, we also can have darkness as the response, or darkness as the stimulus. So for darkness, some plants, like let's say some of the leguminous plants, will show some of the responses. Okay, so there, response of the plants for darkness as the stimulus is nothing but nicty-nasty. Nicty-nasty. Nicty means nighttime. Nocturnal. Have you heard of the word nocturnal? Nocturnal means those organisms which are active during night time. So nocturnal. So in the similar fashion, nicty means night. You remember, like. So response of the plants to the darkness. So that is nothing but nicty-nasty. Okay, so that is one. And then apart from this, you also will have response of the plants towards the touch. So do you remember Mimosa pudica, touch me not plant? So how, if you touch the plant, then its leaves will fall. So can you able to recollect that? So plants also will show a kind of response to the touch. So if touch is the stimulus and the response of the plant to the touch is nothing but thigmonasty. That is nothing but thigmonasty. So these are some of the important responses of the plants towards the abiotic factors. And we also have other things like photoperiodism. Photoperiodism, response or response of the plant towards its physiological growth and development with reference to length of the day. So physiological responses like growth and development of the plant depends upon the length of the day. So such kind of response is known as photoperiodism. So can you able to see the word period? Okay, so photoperiodism is another response. So with respect to photo, light, period, length, so length of the day. If length of the day is more, then the plant growth would be more. If length of the day reduces, plant growth will get reduces. So likewise, so that is another type of response that it will plants will show. So they are all nothing but various responses of the plants to the various abiotic components. Okay, so here very key is that you have to understand what are the various abiotic components. That's what we have done in the first slide. Okay, so try to remember. When you know the basics, then only you can interconnect everything with others. So then, in the similar fashion, animals also will show responses to various abiotic factors. So if you look from the responses of animals to various abiotic factors or physical environment, so we can summarize them as like general responses as well as specific responses. General responses will be there and specific responses also would be there. Okay, so what are the various general responses? So we have things like regulation is one such general response, or confirmation is another type of general response. Regulation, confirmation, migration is another response, or diapause, and the last one we will have is suspension. So regulation is one thing, confirmation is one thing, migration is one thing, and diapause is one thing, suspension is another response. So what do you mean by regulation? Regulation, some organisms are known as regulators. So can you say what is regulation, or what might have been the concept of regulation? Yes, below there, someone, right? Yes. Yes, very good. So exactly. So some organisms will have the mechanism to maintain the constant body conditions. That means, let's say, for example, some organisms will have the mechanisms to maintain or regulate their body temperature irrespective of the surroundings. Like, let's say, for example, mammals and birds. Birds and mammals have the ability to maintain the constant body temperature, and that process is known as homeostasis, or that kind of animals are known as, they are known as warm-blooded animals. And what is the other name for warm-blooded animals? Other name, they are endotherms. Endotherms means those organisms which can maintain their body temperature constantly. So endotherms. And here, that is one thing. So maintaining constant body temperature is nothing but, that is regulation. And conformation is other thing. So here you try to remember about the cold-blooded animals. Cold-blooded animals means like you say fishes, amphibians and reptiles. So all of them, either fishes, amphibians, reptiles, they cannot maintain the constant body temperature. Rather, their body temperature will be dependent upon the external surfaces or outside the environment, outside of their environment. That means to say, if a lizard is there on the wall, so if the wall is cold, then it adapts, it takes up all that kind of temperature and its body will become cold. Or if it goes near to the light, let's say, so you can see sometimes lizards going towards the light, likewise. So when they go there, obviously it takes up the heat from that and its body also will become warm, likewise. So here you can remember that those some organisms will conform with the temperature or the conditions that are outside of them. So those organisms which doesn't have the mechanism of regulating their constant body conditions and their body conditions or temperature depends upon the external surfaces. Okay, so that kind of mechanism is nothing but conformation. They are conforming with the external surfaces, likewise. So that is conformation. Then, in order to escape some of the unfavorable situations, like let's say temperature, unfavorable situation, let's say extreme summer, extreme winter, some organisms will move from one place to another place. Okay, so such mechanism is known as migration. And diapause is nothing but a temporary suspension of the metabolic activities and getting into a state of dormancy. Diapause is a kind of animal dormancy. That means it is a state of inactiveness. Animal dormancy is known as diapause, and suspension means like some of the metabolic activities would be suspended temporarily. Okay, so we'll have things like hibernation, estivation. Have you heard of that? Hibernation and estivation. So they are nothing but some of the activities that comes under suspension. Okay, so that is one thing. So these are general responses. Okay, and then when we talk from the perspective of these specific responses means responses of animals to the light, how they will respond. Okay, so when we look from the perspective of sunlight, response to the sunlight, so how they will respond. Usually we will have two kinds of responses. So some animals or some organisms will be active during the daytime. So those animals which are active during daytime are nothing but diurnal animals or diurnal organisms. Okay, those organisms are those animals which are active during the night time. They are nothing but nocturnal animals or nocturnal organisms. Is that clear? So we have to look for various examples also. So I'll try to dictate the examples. So you remember this is that. So day active animals, organisms, and night active organisms are those organisms which will be active more in daytime than the night time, more in night time than the daytime. So that is also another way how we can define. Okay, so yes, yes. Yes. Yes, diapause and suspension. So suspension is nothing but during some situations, some of the metabolic activities would be completely suspended by some organisms. So let's say hibernation and estivation. It's a kind of suspending the metabolic activities. So that is suspension. So when we talk from diapause, it's a state of animal dormancy. Animal dormancy means here also more or less things looks like same, but here in dormant stage means they will remain they will remain completely inactive, and when favorable situations comes, they'll further becomes active likewise. So thing would be that like it would be with respect to the metabolic activities. Okay. Okay, so that is with reference to these specific responses, so sunlight. And then we can also have responses of the organisms or animals to the temperature. Okay, so how they will respond to the temperature. So in order to escape the extremes of the temperature, they will show three types of responses. One would be hibernation, and other would be estivation, and other one would be migration. Okay, so hibernation, estivation, and migration. So what is hibernation? Hibernation is nothing but it's a kind of winter sleep. You remember, like hibernation refers to a kind of winter sleep. That means in order to escape the extreme conditions during the winter, usually animals will go to a state of inactiveness. Animals will go to a state of inactiveness where where all the metabolic activities would be slowed down. Let's say, for example, digestion, let's say respiration, let's say regulation of the temperature of the body. So all of these things will be slowed down. So that process is nothing but hibernation. That's a kind of response. So it is a kind of winter sleep. Okay, so that is hibernation. And then estivation. Estivation is another type of response where we can say it as a kind of summer sleep. So some organisms will go for will reduce their metabolic activities, or they will go into a state of inactiveness during summer so as to escape from the harsh environmental conditions. Okay, so that is one thing. So then migration is anyhow, it is well known to you. So these are all nothing but some of the responses of the plants, as well as plants and animals to the various physical environment. So that is one thing.